They tell you resistance begins with courage. It doesn't. It begins with something smaller and more humiliating than courage. It begins with learning how to look harmless while your country is being dismantled in front of you. At first, you are only a pair of eyes, 17, maybe 19, old enough to understand what occupation means, young enough to be ignored by men in polished boots. You stand outside a bakery before dawn, hands buried in your pockets, watching trucks roll past with blackout lamps, hooded like blind animals. You count uniforms. You memorize insignia. You study which officers smoke, which drivers talk too much, which street corners stay empty for exactly 30 seconds between patrols. None of this looks heroic. It looks like boredom. It looks like cold fingers and wet shoes and pretending to stare into a shop window while your pulse hammers against forged ration cards. That is your first education. Not in violence. In invisibility, the resistance does not need brave speeches from you. It needs accuracy. A wrong time, a wrong turn, a wrong license plate, and someone else is dragged out of bed before sunrise. Outsiders imagine underground war as dynamite and gunfire. More often, it is memory. Memory sharpened until it becomes a weapon. You learn to remember the chipped blue paint on a supply lorry, the limp in a felled gendarmerie sergeant, the fact that a patrol reaches the bridge at 6:12 and leaves at 6:16. Your reward is silence. If you do your work properly, no one congratulates you. A note disappears from your coat pocket. A message reaches the right apartment. Somewhere, men you never meet decide not to walk into an ambush. Then one winter morning, a woman with a dark scarf drops a loaf of bread beside you and does not pick it up. Inside the split crust is a strip of paper rolled as tightly as a cigarette. 3 names. 1 address. 1 time. That is how you stop being a witness and become useful. As a courier, you discover the true geography of occupied Europe. It is not drawn on maps. It is drawn in stairwells, alleys, rail platforms, church sacristies, butcher shops, cemetery walls, bicycle frames, hemmed dresses, and hollowed heels. The front line runs through ordinary rooms. You carry messages in soap bars inside umbrella handles beneath postage, stamps steamed loose and pressed back into place. You memorize passwords that change every week. You practice answering questions you have not been asked yet. If stopped, you are going to your aunt. If searched, you are bringing medicine. If followed, you take the 3rd tram, never the 2nd, and circle the station until you are sure the same hat is not behind you twice. This rank feels bigger than the first because now you move. You cross districts. You enter apartments that smell of boiled cabbage and printer's ink, rooms where blackout curtains stay closed at noon, rooms where radios whisper London through static while everyone holds still as if noise itself can betray them. Yet you know, less than ever. That is the design. Cells remain small. Names remain compartmentalized. You might risk your life delivering a package and never learn whether it contains forged papers, detonators, or only a list of safe houses already burned. Secrecy is not mistrust. It is mercy. If they break you, they should not get the whole map. And people do break. That knowledge arrives before any act of sabotage. One courier fails to appear. Another reappears with a neat bandage below his ear and says he was delayed. 2 days later, 3 arrests follow. After that, every handshake carries a question. Every delay stretches too long. Every face is measured against the possibility of pain. This is what the rank costs, not movement, but erosion. You stop experiencing strangers as strangers. You experience them as angles of risk. Somewhere, in the 2nd year, your bicycle becomes more important than your name. It carries leaflets calling the occupier vulnerable when everyone can see the occupier is not. It carries photographs of bridge supports, train schedules, black market penicillin, escape routes toward forests and mountains. Sometimes a revolver wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath onions in a basket. You learn the weight of paper. You learn how heavy silence becomes when a checkpoint guard rests his glove on your handlebars and asks where you are going. You answer with annoyance. Never fear. Fear attracts curiosity. Annoyance suggests innocence. That is the kind of detail that keeps you alive. Then the work darkens. Leaflets become fuses. Timetables become targets. You are brought into a cellar that smells of damp stone, machine oil, and singed metal. On the table lie two alarm clocks, a coil of wire, a packet of plastic explosive no larger than a loaf of soap, and a pair of hands missing two fingers. The man attached to those hands speaks softly, almost apologetically, as he shows you how little force it takes to bend a rail, rupture a fuel line, disable a transformer, or turn one truck convoy into a fire visible for miles. He is not teaching you how to destroy. He is teaching you arithmetic. One severed cable means one delayed train. One delayed train means one artillery unit arrives without shells. One bridge repair crew pulled south means another bridge farther north goes unguarded. Resistance at this rank is less rebellion than mathematics performed under curfew. You tell yourself sabotage is cleaner than killing because you aim at steel, not flesh. Then one charge goes off early. A driver burns inside a vehicle you marked only as transport. No one knows whether he was a collaborator, a conscript, or a mechanic with children. That night, the smell of hot rubber follows you into sleep. This is the hidden transfer that comes with responsibility. The war stops being abstractly unjust and becomes personally adhesive. It clings. You can wash your hands and still feel the grit of explosives in your fingerprints. By now, your cell changes shape around absence. The woman with the dark scarf is gone. The printer is gone. A school teacher who translated BBC broadcasts into mimeographed bulletins is gone. Occupation teaches subtraction better than any classroom. Each missing person enlarges the jobs left behind. So you begin to recruit. Though you are careful never to call it that. You notice who lingers after Mass when the priest mentions the deportations. You notice which mechanic curses too quietly when German trucks arrive for repairs. You notice the widow who still has her husband's hidden rifle and has not sold it despite the hunger. You test people the way people once tested weather, by small signs, by pressure, by waiting. This is where outsiders misunderstand rank completely. They think higher position brings authority. In a resistance cell, it brings exposure. The more threads you hold, the more easily the whole web can be traced through your hands. You start arranging drop points, assigning routes, shifting sleeping locations, deciding who knows whom, who should never meet, who is too reckless, who is too frightened, who has already endured enough to be dangerous, because exhaustion can look like courage from the outside. Leadership underground is not glory. It is triage. You do not choose the best options. You choose the least fatal ones. And because you choose, the dead begin to accumulate inside language. This safe house is compromised. That courier is cold. This district is burned. That family has been moved. Euphemism becomes a survival skill, a way of handling grief without letting it spill across the table and drown the task at hand. But grief keeps finding objects. A cup left on a windowsill. A fountain pen with no owner. A child's knitted scarf hidden beneath forged identity papers. You keep going because everyone else keeps going, and because stopping would not restore the missing. It would only join them. Then comes the year when the occupier senses the ground shifting. Allied landings, partisan attacks, rail lines breaking, whispers of retreat. That is when the danger sharpens, not softens. A regime that expects victory can afford routine brutality. A regime that feels time running out becomes ravenous. Curfews lengthen. Collective punishments multiply. Entire blocks are posted with execution notices, names typed in black beneath the language of order. 10 hostages for one officer, 50 for one bombing, 100 for one assassination. The arithmetic changes again. Every act of resistance now casts a civilian shadow. You are old in ways the calendar cannot measure. 23, perhaps 25, but already carrying the habits of someone twice that age. You sit in attics with maps spread over crates, deciding whether to strike a rail junction if reprisals will fall on the workers' quarter nearby. You argue in whispers. You postpone sleep until dawn stains the roof tiles gray. Command, if that is what this is, feels less like issuing orders than inheriting guilt in advance. If the operation succeeds, others claim the courage. If it fails, you count the chairs that remain empty. By the final winter, your rank is almost invisible again. That is the irony. The higher you move inside an underground system, the less your life resembles the dramatic image of rebellion. You spend more time listening than speaking, more time refusing plans than approving them, more time destroying paper than reading it. Names are burned, addresses swallowed, typewriters dismantled and hidden in flour sacks. You send younger couriers along routes you once took yourself and hear your own instructions coming out of your mouth in a voice that sounds older, flatter, less human. Never carry what you cannot eat. Never return by the same street. If a door is answered too quickly, leave. If it is answered too slowly, leave. If anyone uses your real name, leave. And still the net closes. It always closes. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. One arrest becomes two. Two become a sweep. A radio operator disappears with half a frequency book memorized. A dentist's office used for meetings is searched. A farm outside the city yields buried weapons after a neighbor reports unusual footprints in thawing mud. You begin sleeping in barns, basements, abandoned schools. You shave with rainwater. You wake at every engine. Sometimes, you imagine footsteps on staircases that are not there. Sometimes, they are there. When capture finally comes close enough to smell, it is not dramatic. No chase music, no noble posture. Just the blunt mechanics of fear, a knock below. Boots in the hall. The host family frozen around a lamp turned low. You fold one paper, then another. You hold a match to them until the flame bites your fingers. The room fills with that thin, unforgettable smell of singed secrets. For 1 second, you understand the entire resistance as a kingdom of paper that survives only by disappearing in time. Maybe you escape through a rear courtyard slick with rain. Maybe someone else does not. Maybe a comrade buys you 30 seconds with a pistol shot from the stairwell, and 30 seconds turns out to be the length of a human life measured politically. History will later call this bravery. From inside the moment, it feels smaller and crueler. It feels like choosing who remains in the building when the door gives way. If liberation reaches you before prison does, it arrives without the purity people imagine. There are bells, flags, drunken shouting, women climbing onto armored vehicles, children chasing columns of exhausted liberators through streets still smelling of ash, and beneath it, quieter things. Collaborators beaten in public, informants dragged from apartments, accounts settled under the cover of justice, the dead returning only as lists. You stand in the crowd and realize the occupation trained you too well for peace. You still scan rooftops. You still note exits. You still distrust joy that gathers in one place for too long. After the war, the ranks vanish faster than the habits. Lookout, courier, saboteur, organizer. Commander, those are wartime words. In peacetime, no one quite knows what to do with the people who were made by necessity. Some enter politics and learn that secrecy survives regime change. Some join police forces and spend years hunting methods they once used. Some marry, repair bicycles, teach school, keep shops, wake sweating at any knock after midnight, and never explain why they keep a packed bag hidden at the back of a closet. Memory becomes another clandestine operation. You reveal pieces only to those who can bear them. In peacetime, people ask where you served, as if service wore a uniform. You learn to answer with half-truths. You say you carried supplies. You say you helped friends. You do not mention the names you forgot on purpose, or the names you remember against your will. The war taught you concealment so thoroughly that even gratitude feels like another form of interrogation for survivors everywhere. What did each rank give you? Better instincts, colder blood, a voice that can lie without trembling, the ability to assess a room in one glance, to trust sparingly, to act under pressure, to carry unbearable information without dropping it. What did it take? Simplicity. Youth, the luxury of believing that moral choices remain clean when institutions collapse. By the end, you no longer think of courage as a feeling. You think of it as administration performed while afraid, moving the message, burning the paper, opening the door, closing it behind someone who will not return. And that is the secret hidden inside every romantic image of resistance. The ranks are real, but they are not steps upward. They are stages of reduction. At each turn, you become more useful and less intact. The boy on the corner watching trucks disappears into the courier on the bicycle. The courier disappears into the saboteur in the cellar. The saboteur disappears into the organizer with too many names in his head. The organizer disappears into the hunted figure burning documents by lamplight while a house holds its breath around him. Advancement, in this world, means subtraction. Long after the medals tarnish and the occupation is folded into textbooks, what remains is not the map or the slogans or even the victories. What remains is the sound of a bicycle bell in an empty street at dawn, the weight of a loaf of bread that might contain a message, the flare of a match over paper, the knowledge that whole countries can depend, for a time, on ordinary people learning how to become unreadable. If you have ever mistaken survival for innocence, remember this life. In a resistance cell, every rank asks you to give up another version of yourself. And when the war is finally over, when the flags are lowered and the names are carved into stone, the last duty is the hardest one of all. You must go on living as if the door will not be kicked in tonight.